To be logical is to be theological. One cannot logically deny God. To claim there is no God is to leave everything hanging. Without God, everything is possible and nothing is certain. One can deny God, but one cannot replace him. Atheists attempt to, with themselves and arbitrary rules, but the results lead to war and crime and societal breakdown. Risk is the great enemy. The threat of loss is what defeats human ambition and keeps our dreams small and our aspiration chained to the wall of defeat. When we do not trust others, we cannot possess ambition. The investments of time and wealth required to be ambitious is not possible in an environment in which there are high levels of risk. Without God and the direction He gives us, we are lost. God gives us logic, morality, and purpose. If we obey God, follow Jesus, and are guided by the Spirit, we are led to perfection. God cannot be guiding us if we end up in something or somewhere less than perfect. To even be logical, we must accept there is perfect truth. We cannot do logic if we assume there is no truth or the only truth available to us is less than perfect. What is truth if it is contingent or probabilistic? How can we have progress if there is nothing perfect to aim for? What is logic if it only leads to relativistic conclusions? Inductive truths are not even logical or analytical. They are at best empirical observations. If you were to go into a store and there was a large choice of candies and you wanted to buy some for someone and you knew nothing about their tastes or candies, how would you make a logical choice? Whatever selection you made, it would be a random one. But even assume you know everything there was to know about these candies and you know what the person you purchased them for liked and disliked. The choice you made would still be a random one without a destination, without some goal you hoped to achieve. The choice would be far different if you wanted to annoy the person than if you wished to impress the person or you wanted to bring joy into their life. We cannot make a logical choice unless there is a destination we wish to arrive at. A person driving a car or building something is not logical or acting logical if he does not have a destination planned. Even if he is going for a joyride that becomes something of a destination of objective, if there was absolutely no reason to be on the road, then could it be said that he is acting rationally? But if there are no absolutes, how can there be a destination? But if there is a destination and the destination is an absolute, what could it be but perfection? There cannot be any other final destination than this. Logic is logical, or to use another word, logic is rational. Logic must explain itself. It cannot look to an external source of justification. Thus, the end product of reason is the achievement of perfection. If we are logical and follow logic perfectly, there must be an ultimate destination that we arrive at. If the end of all reason is a conditional proposition, how can this, a conditional conclusion, be the end of reason or the culmination of all logical inquiry? Rationality requires a different reality than the conditional, empirical one we inhabit. If we try to be reasonable without God, what do we base right and wrong on? Whatever it is, it will be an idol. True objectivity requires a true absolute, and by definition, there are no other absolutes but God. God is not logical in the sense of an equivalence, but God created logic to make it possible for man to find him. God in a logical sense is truth. God is found through logic and truth. But that too is objective in the absolute sense, meaning it is not just about numbers. God is the absolute in the sense of the prime directive or first-order principle. God is the absolute in the sense he is the beginning and end of logic and truth. God is the proposition on which all logical deduction rests. Without the perfection of God, logic has no place to begin or end. If we do not postulate the existence of God, there is no logic. There is nothing to deduce any truth from. If reality is physical, on what basis do we establish what is true? It is true that the sun comes up every morning and everything that is dropped falls to earth. But these are conditional truths. Nothing can be predicted on this basis. The sun comes up, but it does not really rise, because in our frame of reference it is a stationary object, and it is the Earth's spin that gives us the impression of a sun which moves. But these observations are not logically necessary. The laws that appear to regulate are merely descriptive and have no regulatory power at all. It is only when we understand that God exists that predictability enters the world. We know that if God exists, he is perfect because God is perfect, and if he is not perfect, he is not God. Whatever is perfect is God, and that which is not perfect is not God because God is perfection by definition. The perfection of God is logically necessary. God is logically perfect because logical perfection is logically possible. God being perfect is and does all that is logically possible, including being perfect. Logical perfection includes creating logical perfection. Logical perfection must be aware of itself to be logically perfect. This is what we understand as mind. Mind is the logically perfect awareness of logical perfection. The mind is simply the awareness of logical perfection, and by extension, the degree of awareness is equal to the logical perfection of that which is aware. Logical perfection requires an infinite mind, as infinite logical perfection is an infinitely logical mind. We are part of that mind. Those who are not imbued with the Spirit of God have no direction because God gives them no destination. We need God to orientate us. The glory of God is His inestimable ability to serve as our North Star, our guiding light. If we are without God, there is nothing to guide us. We must find our way tactically, that is, doing what we feel is in our own best if short-term interest. But if we are all acting in a tactical way, we are all competing to see who will gain the greatest advantage. And if we are all in competition with each other, and if this competition gets out of hand, we will create nations, and we will create wars between these nations. Without God, what other choice do we have? There is, without God, no standard or basis for determining action than our own best interests, which naturally puts us in competition with everyone else. This cannot be considered rational, even though it is rational to focus on our own best interests, if this is what everyone else is doing. In an irrational system, it makes sense to act in an irrational manner. At least it is not possible to act as one would have if where one lived was peopled by rational beings. In a world of competition or where there is no direction, one must act tactically, that is, in a way that makes the best of the situation one is in. To act strategically in the long term, we need a direction and a destination. We need a standard to evaluate our performance. The world, in its many manifestations, tries to liberalize man, to make man his own God and guide. There is no freedom other than freedom from God, for only the power of God is able to bind us and constrain us. Man wishes to be free from the logical constraints of the Almighty. But what we really need is direction and a way to measure our progress, to hold ourselves accountable for what we are doing. This world is centered on man and is humanist. But every human thinks they are the ideal human, and all other humans ought to model themselves on them. This creates a lot of conflict and chaos. Man cannot serve as the center of reality, for reality cannot be based on conditional truth. A priori and apologetic is the theology of honesty, because only in honesty can we find God. Logic is the search for honesty and an exercise in honesty. Logic keeps us honest. Putting our hope in humanity is not honest. If a position is not honest, it is not logical, because logic is the exercise of honest thinking. To be logical, we must be honest, and honesty must be our highest priority. We cannot be honest humanitarians because humanism is not an honest position. We cannot put humanity first because humanity is not the highest of all possible conceptions. Humanity cannot be the priority. If humanity was the property focus of man, then human progress would not be possible. Progress is possible only if there is something higher than man for man to aspire to. That is God, and the aspiration of man is to be like God. We cannot do this if we are gods. We can only do this if God is God, and man places himself under God. Man must seek divinity through God and by the means of God, or he is not logical and not being honest. To not seek God is to not be honest because it suggests we think we are God, that is, we are the highest form we can be. To be logical is to understand we are human, but not the highest of all things nor the thing which is to be honored. Logically, we must believe in and reverence God. To be logical, we need to understand the logical necessity of seeking God, because we are not God, and if God, not perfect, we must seek and be guided by the preference for perfection. Anything less than this is not logical. Therefore, the only logical course of action is to seek God, as this is seeking after perfection.